In today's Travel Days series, we are going to head to Nepal and get inspired by the Sadhus. So, I found this photograph on Unsplash and I really wanted to limit not only my time but my supplies. So, I'm going to be working, I just have a charcoal stick here. And you're going to see me, I'm kind of using the edge, and I'm going to start just kind of doing a contour of the face, starting to build in some of the features really quickly. My goal in this lesson is to show you that you really don't need a lot of time or an extensive amount of supplies in order to practice your art. I hear often from artists and creatives that they don't have enough time for their art. And I think what happens is it gets in people's heads that they have to create this amazing masterpiece painting. And instead, just allow yourself whatever amount of time you have. I mean, it can be as simple as, this drawing, which I'm going to do in less than 20 minutes, just to show you that, you can practice. And, maybe you're working on a painting and you just have 5 minutes, just add a little bit more to your painting each day. So, I'm keeping this really simple and I'm going from a mix of using the edge of the charcoal, because this is a square piece of charcoal, and then also kind of smearing it on the edge, which will give me kind of a different look. I can either get more refined lines or use it more kind of as a value. And the beautiful thing about charcoal is you can easily smear it and create these kind of really nice deep shadows and values in your piece, which I think is really lends itself well to portraiture. I often hear, people don't like using charcoal because it does smear so much. But I think, once you get to use the smearing to your advantage, you're going to start to really like it a little bit more. There are fixatives that you can spray your piece as you go along so you don't get as much smearing, or you can go in with like a mono eraser and kind of erase some of those smudge marks. But I love the smudge marks. I think they're kind of part of charcoal drawings and they create a lot of character within your drawings. But you can see I'm doing a mix here of smearing and creating some deep shadows in combination with some of this line work. And you can go in and kind of smear and then add in more line work. And you will see me later in the lesson. I'm going to come in with a little bit of Stabilo. I like to switch between charcoal and then Stabilo, which will give it a little bit more of a defined line. But I'm just trying to bring out some of these shapes, starting to bring out some of the values in the face. There's some really dark shadows on his face, particularly like his eyes are set back in these deep dark shadows, and then they almost kind of pop out a little bit. And then that right side of his face is completely in shadow. So I'm going to want to put a lot of contrast here. But sadhus are often found in Nepal or India. And they often live in the holy Hindu temple or the complex or near it. And what distinguishes them is, not only their look and, the painted face, but you really, they give up attachment to all material things. And, because of this, they're deeply devoted to their path of spirituality, and the devotion is shown in them giving up material things in life. By renouncing some of these attachments, they're connecting more and more to the divine or spiritual world. It's really this way in Hindu and Buddhism to reach a state of enlightenment. So even though they've given up these possessions, they do have this very distinctive look to them. Especially you see these colorful paints on their faces. Sometimes they have these saffron colored robes. So it in a very distinct look. They really can stand out. especially if you're traveling through Nepal. This is kind of a path outside of what Western civilization would call the norm. Giving up materialism. I mean, think about what your life would be like if, you had given up your own possessions. And I think that's a really interesting way to kind of to think of life. So, I'm still coming in here with this charcoal, and I like to kind of build layers, dark layers, and then keep smearing them. I'm essentially trying to, sculpt the face a little bit. Being that this is a very quick drawing and I'm not spending a lot of time, I'm not mapping it out quite as much as I would if I were going to do a longer drawing or I had more time. My goal is to really just kind of study the shapes, study kind of in general where the eye lands, but it's not going to look exactly like this person. But this is kind of my first version. Now, what I could do as I continue this practice is do a more detailed version of the sketch. And then I could even move into a painting. I could start with an acrylic painting, or I could just jump right in and do an oil painting of this exact same photograph of the same model. So, it's a great way to just kind of practice and not spend a ton of time. Let's say you have 20 minutes or you're watching a show with your family. It's a great time to just pull out a sketchbook and pull out two materials. You could even just have one material. You could just work in pencil if you are kind of overwhelmed by charcoal. But I encourage you to try charcoal. I think it gets a bad rap again for the smearing, but it is because of that smearing that you really can build the depth and the form, especially in portraits. By smearing this charcoal, you're really creating these deep values, which then lends itself well to creating like a 3D form on paper. I also like charcoal because I find that it's malleable. You can move it around. And I think as people begin creating portraits, they start to really do like really defined eyes, for example, or really defined mouths. And the most realistic portraits really are just building up value rather than defining the features. So, it's that typical drawing an eye like an almond shape with a circle in it, is not going to look near as realistic as just building dark and light values next to each other. And I think that the charcoal lends itself really well, that you almost have to avoid those really defined features and instead create kind of a more subtle version, so that it just kind of builds on it. So it builds these kind of layers of this dark values, these midtones and these darker range values, in order to create the illusion of these features rather than defining them with a line. And if you do have some smear marks or smudge marks that you really don't like, you can come in with that mono eraser that you saw right there, and that can really erase some of your marks. I also like to use it on the edge, and you can see here that nice technique that it creates, especially in the background, and it just creates a whole nother texture within your piece. You will see me bring in some Stabilo. And the reason is, I'd say that charcoal kind of has this kind of grayish color. Stabilo is going to bring out your true dark black color. And I love the mix of the grayish of the charcoal and that softness of the charcoal, with then adding in a little bit more definition with your Stabilo. But you see that this right side of the nose is very much in value. So I'm starting to, really blend that in and build that up over and over again to really create these deep, dark shadows under the eyes, where the nose is. And I say this a lot, but squint at your photograph, see where your darkest values are, and start bringing those into your piece. And then, and then you can kind of smear it and make them a little bit more subtle if you need. So I'm going to start to come in with that Stabilo, and this is where I'm starting to create the very darkest values, and this gives me just a little bit more control. The charcoal is very loose, very really creating those shapes, but this starts to give me a little bit more control of the features and bring in a little bit more line work within my piece. I'm starting to go in different directions, and depending on how much I press on the paper, will obviously depend how much value is showing up on the page, so how dark it is. But just, I'm going in lightly to start, trying to map it out a little bit, and then when I get the features where I want, then I can come in with some darker lines and press a little bit harder down on the Stabilo. He has this really neat beard. It's kind of wiry. He has some curls in his actual hair, and so I want to start to create some of that and start to define some of those features. When I first came in, I just came in with the mouth, basically where the mouth would go. And then I find that to be helpful when you're working on a portrait of someone with a beard, because you really do want to define where the mouth goes and then put the beard over it, because it is darker in that area. But it also helps you to figure out, alignment wise, where you're going to put the beard as well. And this is where you can start to have fun with it, do some cross hatching, some diagonal line work. You can see I'm kind of keeping this kind of sketchiness to follow the line work of his beard. And, then just kind of creating a little bit more of, the top of his head as well. So as simple as their possessions are, you will see them with these kind of saffron robes a lot of time. And there's a lot of deeper significance to the color saffron. In India and in Nepal, the color, signifies different things. And but on a spiritual sense, it symbolizes the god of fire. So that really kind of ties back in to some of that tradition and to the religion based on even the colors that they wear. Now, we are just focusing on a black and white drawing, so we're not bringing in much of this color. But even when you see the yellows, that's going to be more of kind of your mid-tones in your black and white drawing. And it's also symbolic of their renunciation, basically renouncing material attachments. So I'm just coming in now. I'm starting to create a little bit more line work that's defined. Starting to build some of those line marks of the robe, which you see a lot of that really, kind of drapey look of the clothing. And then I'm going to want to come in and bring in some of the line work as well in his face. He's a little bit older. You can see kind of the lines, maybe the weathering, due to, even his environment. Nepal is a harsh environment with, when you think of it, you think of adventure and outdoors, but it's this landlocked country situated in the Himalayas. So it's, bordering these mountains. You're bound to get lots of wind and snow and that sun beating down, which is also going to have an impact on the people and the faces. And I think it's important to know a little bit about the environment that the people live in when you're creating a portrait. I often talk about the importance of storytelling, and so knowing a little bit more about the countryside behind the portrait, I think, is very important. I also think whenever possible, work from your own photos. But for now, I just found this on Unsplash. I don't know this person's story. So, I have to almost create my own and kind of put him in the scenery and put him in the environment that maybe he would be at. But if you are there and if you are traveling, I would encourage you to try to find the stories behind your photographs. Really talk to the people, figure out their story, and let that seep into your artwork. So instead of using a white piece of paper, my journal is a little bit of an off-white. So I'm going to come in with my charcoal pencil, which is in white, to come in with some of these highlights, especially in the eyes, that little glisten in his eyes, that tip of his nose gets a lot of white. So I love working on either the tone paper, there's like a tone gray, a tone beige, or in this Delusions journal where the paper is a little off-white, because it brings a warmth already to your portraits. And then you can come in with either white gesso or a gel pen or a white colored pencil to bring in just a hint of those highlights. And then coming back in again with my Stabilo to bring in that dark contrast. You can see I came in with a little bit more of that line work, starting to, create some more of that features in his face. I would spend a lot more time if I had, but I want to really keep this brief. I want to keep it short. So I'm just kind of generalizing and creating like dark areas, but I'm not drawing every single line on the face or every little blotch on his face. I'm going to just do kind of the basic features so that I can keep the video short and allow myself just this 20 minutes to create and to kind of connect to a different part of the world, and build a little bit of my own knowledge, on the history and the traditions of the culture, while kind of creating a portrait. I think it's a great way to kind of bring in art history and my love and travel, as we do in all our classes and our lessons at this point. I kind of fell into this travel art because it was my passion. I loved to travel and then I loved art. So it seemed just such a simple way to kind of combine my own passions. And maybe you're not a big traveler. And in that case, find something that you're passionate about. Maybe you're passionate about boats or the sea or mountains or cooking. You could even draw, the produce that you like to cook and connect in that way. But follow those passions and follow what really is calling to you, because, the more you're passionate about a subject matter, the more it's going to show in your artwork, and the easier it will be to show up for your art practice. If you're painting something or drawing something that you don't love subject wise, of course it's going to be hard to get to your studio and carve out time for yourself and for your art practice. I just love to explore more places, even beyond where I've been. It just is a great way for me to kind of connect and figure out where I would like to go more, or just to learn a little bit more about the world around us. I think every culture has beautiful things to offer, and I think it's a great way for me personally to learn and continue to grow. So I hope you feel the same. And as always, I love to see not only your work, but I love to hear of your travel stories. I can't tell you how many amazing stories I have heard from all of you, just about your own journeys and your own travel, and your challenges even that come with it, and also the wonderful things that have come out of travel for you. And also I think that kind of mirrors the same things that can happen in our art practice. There's a lot of growth and trying new things, and I think that's kind of mimics the same things that happen in our travels. So I'm just building up again some of this line work, looking a little bit closer at where I need some more values, and still keeping it pretty simple, but just adding a little bit more depth to this portrait. I hope you enjoyed this short lesson today. And for more of our Travel Days series, head over to our blog to watch more of our free videos, or you can join one of our longer, more extensive classes to learn more about technique, art history, and to learn more about more and more mediums. Thank you so much.